morning, everybody. Today is September the 5th, and that means later on this afternoon we will get new model data from the European model on a 7-month projection. So I am looking forward to analyzing that tonight when I get home, and we'll be sure to put that into the forecast video tomorrow morning. So we'll hit a lot of long-range forecast content tomorrow. I'm also going to do a bit of a model verification on the summer model forecast performance. So we'll do that as well in tomorrow's video. But today I want to talk about temperatures to start things off. And so our first map goes back from April 15th to September the 4th. And we're looking at temperature ranks. And I want to focus on the prevalence of cooler air that has been just, on repeat in parts of the northern plains. Now, we've had heat waves. They've been in short in duration, but overall, we'll look back on this growing season and see a deficit of the accumulation of heat. All right, so yeah, at times it got hot. I mean, during the Farm Progress show, upper 90s, we had 108 as a heat index in western Iowa. It did get hot at times, but overall, the accumulation heat was slow. And we've brought this up a few times, but I want to show you the latest update I have on GDD and anomalies. So when we look at this, again, we're just looking at the historical accumulation of GDDs over the last 20 years, and I'm comparing it to this year. And so there's a pretty sizable deficit in the northern plains. And given how extremely wet this area was and the late plant, the lack of consistent heat getting those GDDs in place is problematic here. Thinking about that, actually, you know what I want to do real quick? I'm going to do this later for another region, but let's do this NDVI. I'm curious. I haven't looked at this for a while. Hopefully this will load quickly. My hotel internet's a bit slow this morning. But I'm curious, like if we just choose Iowa, yes, no surprise here that the NDVI values are above average. And the reason for that is we expect NDVI values to begin to fall quickly at this point in the year. But they're still very high in this region because the crop is still very green and healthy and growing rather than moving toward those stages that we'd start to expect to see it, its color and therefore health start to change as it moves toward when we need to harvest it. So I think about all of that and also think about the lack of stress. Everywhere that you see in the greens here is where we have we're below the threshold by which heat stress tends to cause yield loss in corn across the middle and northern Cornbelt. So it's been a summer that we've just not had extensive long duration heat. We had 3 or 4 good waves of it, but they were only ever able to last 3 or 4 days. Meanwhile, Texas had one that lasted 45 days. Florida got, absolutely cooked for a while there. That's borrowing a term from my son, who seems to use that all the time right now. And then in the West, we saw just excessive heat in California, like July, just wouldn't stop. And then we're right now dealing with the heat wave in the Northwest. So it's amazing to see the contrast of the South, South Central, and then the Western United States compared to the Great Lakes states in the Midwest and the Northern Plains. And that's the area I'm worried about right now. If you go look at the upper level flow pattern, we do have a trough that's right in through here. It's bringing a front through parts of the Midwest today. And we have this one right there that left, northern Canada yesterday. And both of these are going to come together over the Great Lakes by this weekend. And what I'm concerned about is as that low spins up here over the Great Lakes, it'll be a pretty tight little circulation. So we're going to see some interesting flow across the Great Lakes. I saw a couple of the National Weather Service offices tweeting out that this is a prime setup for something called cold air funnels. But I'm worried about on the back side of this what the temperatures might do. Now we're going to get to the rest of the country in just a few moments, and we're really going to be talking, if we step down in the atmosphere, about tropical low pressure developing off the coast of Texas and the flooding threat here. We have a low that now has a better chance of developing into a tropical system. We have a big wave maker going up the East Coast, and we're going to take a look at anything that could come out of the out of the Caribbean or the Gulf of Mexico or the Western Atlantic in the next 10 days. But watch. Here are those two pieces. Well, let me go back and show you them. They're right here. So as we start this off today, let's get to this morning in the forecast. There they are. So we have this wave and this wave. And you're going to notice they're both going to come together. And by the time we get, into the weekend, let's just stop it there, 0Z on Sunday. So it's supposed to be Saturday night. We have a large ridge building in the west. That's all heat, of course. And this trough is very deep in this area. And the concern is with the low that's there, how quickly it's going to spin up. We've been looking earlier this week at the model forecast and seeing some snow in this part of Ontario. But on the back side of this, what I'm concerned about is the way the pressure changes. Because at that same time period, you notice a large area of high pressure builds in. And so if you think about this again, what's going on the back side of this low? So the airflow is coming quickly over this ridge, and it begins to slow down here as it goes into the base of this trough. It'll gain its momentum again around the trough. But what you end up getting is an area of upper level convergence here. And that convergence means that air is going to, at the jet stream level, pile up. It cannot go up. Up is the stratosphere, and the stratosphere is this statically stable lid on the top of the troposphere, the layer of the atmosphere we live in. So the air has to go down, and as the air goes down and sinks, it hits the ground and spreads out. And where it hits the ground, right where it hits the ground and spreads out, this is over a huge area, the size of 3 or 4 states, okay? The winds are very slow. It's just very, very slow because the pressure is just building over the top of this, and that's what you see here. Now notice the isobars, which is what's contoured, are very far apart. And my concern is that with the spacing of those isobars being so far apart, the winds are going to get quite light. So this is an animation showing you what those winds are going to be starting off this morning, going through the day today. We're going to watch this big tropical system here in a few minutes. We'll talk about what's going on in Texas. But this is Friday morning, and this is Saturday morning. Now, if you notice, do you see this area in through here where the winds are light? In fact, there's almost no vector on my map. That is where we have that upper level convergence. That's where we have the surface high pressure being built. And when you have light winds, you have nothing to mix out an inversion. You know what an inversion is, right? That's where the temperatures at night above the surface are still warm, but the surface is radiatively cooling, just sending its heat through long-wave infrared radiation back out into the atmosphere and eventually into space. I mean, that's what Earth is trying to do all the time, is just reach an equilibrium temperature with respect to its distance from the sun. Okay, well, anyway, as it does that, it radiates that heat back to space. The surface cools off very quickly. A wind can mix that up and prevent that from occurring. The other thing that can stop it is cloud cover. But it's hard to get clouds to form in sinking air. Okay, so that's why high pressure cells have clear skies. And so that morning, Saturday morning, I'm just concerned about the temperatures. And then you'll see again, if we just go out here to Sunday morning, I'm concerned about how cool it's going to get, a little bit farther to the south, and even again on Monday morning, right in through here. So we just need to think this through and try to figure out where those cold temperatures are going to be. And I'm going to show them to you here by looking at the minimum temperatures currently being forecast by the National Digital Forecast Database. So there's Friday, the beginning of the cool. Here we go into Saturday. Heat wave is on in the west, but these are Saturday morning lows. And as you can see here, we're down, just north of the Dells here at 34. And there'll be places in the UP. There'll be places in northern Minnesota. This whole region is likely going to see these temperatures getting down there into the, the upper 30s, low 40s, with a few areas that just traditionally are cooler because of several geographical reasons showing up here, especially in Wisconsin. That's Saturday morning. Here's Sunday. Now this is when it just propagates farther east. And so what I'm saying here is that there will likely be some patchy frost issues with this, despite the models not showing that yet. Because whenever we get those perfect conditions, you may have a forecast for 38, but it just blows right past it if you don't have moisture in the air or if you don't have wind and you've got clear skies. So I'm just concerned about that as we go forward, but you can clearly see that the west is having a massive heat wave. And that heat wave we're going to have to talk about in a few minutes, but I do have a frost potential map. I show it to you all the time. And this map is made if I find a location that has a temperature that might approach 35 degrees. And it's still not quite showing fully the risk of this, but I'm just going to tell you, I think there'll be more patchy frost. I should make my circle nice and tight here, but in this area. The Great Lakes will likely prevent that from happening along their edges, of course, simply because the water's still so warm and you get the warming effect of the lake, but I just wanted to bring that up. Okay, following that, let's shrink this all back up. There we go. We do not expect, this, of course, to last, and there's going to be some sizable heat that moves back into the Canadian prairie and moves right back over the Midwest. So if we get away from a frost event now, we're going to be clear all the way through the middle of the month and possibly even beyond that because of the way the jet stream is lining itself up with troughs in the Gulf of Alaska, troughs off the East Coast, and an elongated frontal boundary that lives right in here. So I think we're going to see quite a bit of heat after this. Now, along that setup where there's this stalled out frontal boundary, this pressure trough that's in this area, there's a low that's here spinning up. There's another one that's here that's trying to spin up. That brings us back to a discussion about the tropical season. We've now got 4 areas to watch, but, there's no red on this map. There's a 20% chance of this one, a 10% here, a 30% chance here. This one's got me intrigued, and a 20% here. This is just going to be a big wave maker in the North Atlantic, though. What I'm watching carefully, let's go back to one of my favorite sites, Weather Nerds here, is that this low that's currently forming off the coast it's going to be bringing in some very heavy rain. But it's about 8, 9, 10 days from now that something in the Bay of Campeche, so watch it right here, right there. See that moving north? That's the thing that's got me intrigued, because there is still one outlying model that is attempting to just take all of that and shove it in deeper into the Mississippi Valley, maybe up to the Ohio Valley. And that's our artificial intelligence model. Now, at times this year, the AI has done great. At other times, I'm scratching my head going, what in the world is it doing? And I want to know, how's it going to perform with this one? You're going to see those differences in just a few moments. But first, I'm going to give you some probabilities. Over the next 10 days, what's the greatest probability of at least getting tropical depressions to form? And you can see those areas we just highlighted. But what you don't see is that this takes us right up to the peak in the hurricane season, and there's just no big monster storm systems being forecast yet. But remember, there is still another second half of this hurricane season, so another 45 to 60 days to go after we get through the next week and a half or so. So thinking all of that through, let's get to some satellite data from yesterday. Already you can see along that stalled out boundary just the deep convection that continues to fire. And this is the low that I'm most concerned about spinning up here, potentially just soaking a big section here of Texas, Louisiana, maybe some of Mississippi. The frontal boundary that was sneaking right in through here did not put down much precipitation. We were not expecting that. But you can see the advancement of the colder air with this cloud shield here. That's going to be a part of the low that will spin up and bring in the much colder air into this region soon. Following it, major warm-up, but right now, not the case. In the west, the heat wave that is coming into the west, we've already got excessive heat watches, warnings, and advisories, plus air quality alerts, given the wildfires that continue to go into this area. And you can see the fires in Idaho, but also, the resurgence of fires in Idaho and some still lingering down here in California. So we're going to have to keep a close eye on that. But I mentioned that front didn't have much precip in it. Over the last 48 hours, right along the front range, we did better. But there's still broad areas here of the northern plains that could use another good push of rain that this front really didn't deliver. But as we talked about for the last couple of videos, Texas, after going 45, 50 days of nothing except for heat, has now just again been adding on to more of the precipitation. In the last 2 days, we've got some places here that have picked up another 1 to 2 inches in Texas and some locally heavier amounts elsewhere. Also take note of the locally heavy rain in Florida along that frontal boundary that just continues to linger there. Okay, where is it all going? This is the all hazards weather map early this morning. There's all your excessive heat watches, warnings, and advisories, and you've got your air quality issues here. There's some dense fog being reported this morning along the Red River Valley of the North, and here's our flood issues down here across the south. So using the high-res NAM, this is, I think, a pretty good initialization this morning, and it's showing those same features. That front dives through. Not a major severe weather threat for this, but dotted along the front, chances for some rain. That will be through tonight. We're going to see if we can get some of this rain into the panhandle of Texas, but the heaviest rains are going to be along this low curling up down here from the Texas to Louisiana to Mississippi coast. And I'd say the big thing that increased in this is the rainfall getting into Mississippi and the very lower end of the Mississippi Valley. So this is through tomorrow morning, Friday morning, playing out there through Friday midday and afternoon. The front clears. Could get a line of storms out of this coming through the eastern Cornbelt. Everyone in this area, I think, would welcome some of this rain. Excuse me. And then we played this out all the way through Saturday morning. And that is when the low curls up. There it is. Look at that. Really beautifully displayed here on the NAM. There's one front. Our other big low is moved up toward the Canadian Maritimes. And there's your stalled out boundary we keep talking about. This is when the light winds and the cool air comes diving in. So we'll watch out for that on Saturday morning. So from there, I want to show you our multi-model run here. This is the WPC forecast for the next 7 days. And even with that front coming through, notice that these rainfall totals are not very high with this. The heaviest rain is along the Gulf Coast. That's a WPC. This would be the national blend of models, very similar. If you just go back and forth, you can see the similarities. And I'm working on a new product that kind of puts all 5 models together and gives us kind of some confidence by looking at all of them together. And that's already supposed to be done in the national blend, but I'm going to try it again with just a little bit different technique. This would be the European high-res, very similar forecast. Very wet eastern Canada from Ontario north. That's where the low curls up. Some snow risk in here as well. In fact, I'm curious. Let's just go flip this over. ACC snow. Yeah, there it is. Possibility of some snow right in through there. I can't believe we're looking at snow maps already, but that's what you've got. But the heaviest rain's down here along the Gulf Coast. Next, this would be the GFS. And the one that I've not shown you so far is the AI model. And the AI model for the next 7 days is very similar. But what's interesting is this. None of the models are doing that for day 10. So from day 7 to day 10, the AI is attempting to take this low that develops out of the Bay of Campeche, gets into this region, so not the current low, the one that comes out of the Bay of Campeche, and just draws it right up into the Ohio River Valley, all throughout this extremely dry area. And I want you to see that. So this is this weekend, right? So we know about that. So we just play forward. There's the ridge that comes in, bringing the heat. Watch right down here. This is next Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. This is next Friday, Friday the 13th. Oh, Friday the 13th. And this is going to pull this low that weekend right over southern Illinois. And if that does occur, all the other pieces are still here that we've been talking about. But if that occurs, that's going to be dragging moisture right into one of our dry spots, one of the areas we've been very concerned about. It even increases the moisture over parts of Alabama and Georgia. And we'll not be putting anything here where we've had all of this dryness as of late, but certainly moving some moisture into places that really, really could use this. And I'm talking a lot about the Mississippi. I'm actually looking at it right outside my hotel room right now. I'm in the Quad Cities. And while it's not as low as it is in Memphis, because this is after you get the confluence of the Missouri and the Ohio River, which, as you can see, both of those basins, the Missouri River starts way up here and all the way down like that. Look at all that dryness along the Missouri River. So when you get to Memphis, these levels are low, and it's now 6.64 feet below low stage. And I think with the upcoming dry forecast, you're going to see the week 2 in just a moment, we're going to be struggling to get that moisture into place and leave it there. By the way, I said I could see the river. This is what it looks like. Went for a quick walk along it here in the Quad Cities last night. And while it looks, it's low, but it's not terribly low here. But I just wanted to show you what that, the river looked like. It was beautiful last night. Okay, so back to this idea. Last 30 days, I was talking with some folks down here. Jeff Nally yesterday, he's like, Eric, it has not rained in my backyard in a very, very long time. And it got very hot recently. I said, Jeff's going to cool down and you've got a chance. But man, the chance is so low. It's only in one model. But this is just important to see this dry region and what could happen with that tropical system if the AI has it right. So we've got to watch that for the next 7 days. That's how long it is until this thing even forms. So let's keep an eye on it together. All right, probability-wise, this is the chance at getting an inch over the next 10 days. And so notice that the European ensemble is not even aggressive at bringing that system out of the Gulf Coast. It's only the artificial intelligence that seems to be doing it. And if we go back and say, well, who's going to be on the really dry side of things over the next 10 days, that's what you've got. This is the probability of staying under 1/10 of an inch. And unless the European ensemble has it right, that whatever this thing is, it ends up bringing it to here, this whole region is going to be very, very dry. Well, let's tighten that up a bit. This whole region is going to be very, very dry as we go forward in this forecast. You already know about my concern from yesterday as we talked about the southern and central plains. And I just wanted to point out that that area is one of concern because of the model differences. Okay, getting out there into week 2, you can see all the models lined up, right? And they all look very similar. CPC, European, and the GFS. The outlier, is this one, the artificial intelligence. And that's what it's attempting to do for week 2. So it is, going after this. And I think it's important we vet the model and test it and see if it's right. So if it misses this, then we need to take it down a peg or two on our reliability here. All right, that's okay. That's what we do with models. We evaluate them. They're continually improved. But I'll just be interested to see if it does well with this. All right, back on the temperature side of this, let's go to the max temperatures next. So here's today's highs. There's Friday into Saturday. So the massive heat wave coming up the West Coast. Temperatures here in the Columbia Basin are, 15 to 20 degrees above average. And we are on the opposite side of that. We're 10 to 15 degrees below average here in the Midwest for high temperatures on Saturday. We then get into Sunday. The cooler air moves east and south, and it stays there by the time we get to Monday. But the ridge at that part of the week is already opening. The heat wave moves into parts of Montana, into the central plains, into the northern plains, into the Canadian prairie, and now we're there. Troughs living here, trough living there, connected to a trough developing here. And in the middle, a large ridge. That's what we're going to see. So just to reiterate that point I made a moment ago, if you're able to get past the cold coming, there is going to be quite a bit of warmth in the central part of North America as that new pattern sets up, and even to the point where the Climate Prediction Center is looking at the risk of excessive heat from the 12th through the 18th, but primarily around the 12th when the heat begins to get out of Montana over into the Dakotas. But it's still there all the way out until, maybe the 20th. And as long as Alaska doesn't see any massive heat waves, we're going to mostly slide into a mild fall. So this upcoming weekend, low temperatures, I think, is what's going to be critical for a lot of the crop in this area. So to finish this up, I just want to look at some international stuff, and then we'll do a more in-depth long range tomorrow. This is what I've currently got for the next 10 days from the European model, looking at average temperature anomalies. And we've talked a lot about South America, but just take a look at the heat that's in China and the heat that's in Western Russia, Eastern Europe. This has been an area that I've been watching all summer. And again, it's very dry in the upcoming 10-day forecast. And if we look at the NDVI values there, so I picked out, this side of Ukraine and this part of the Russian grain belt, the NDVI values are like the new lowest. And there are some places, some of these states, provinces, sections of these countries, it's way off the charts. And I don't understand how this wasn't more of a factor this year with global grain production and market movement, but it is what it is, and I just want to show you the data. I mean, this is a very, very large area that I've just highlighted here. It may look small, but this is huge. And, to see this much, a problem, and knowing that the precipitation forecast is so dry and hot means that whatever's there in terms of summer crops are going to continue to struggle. Into South America, no early arrival of the monsoon. Again, this is an October thing. We're going to wait till we get way into October before I think we see good moisture coming through there as well. Where the MJO lives right now is here. That gives us a good indication of what La Nina is up to, and that's going to be a main topic, I think, for tomorrow as we think hard about where this La Nina is going to go when we get the new European data. That should be in late this afternoon. I look forward to seeing it when I get home, and I'll just talk to you again in the morning. Hope you all have a good day. Thanks.